The Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, kinda power. I love the power. I love the power.
Hi guys, I'm Macca 19 and this is the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast coming to you live once again on Port Fan Radio. Look, Rick's still on stress leave from Pidar getting injured, so we've got two guests on this evening. The first is the long-awaited return of Tribey. How are you, mate?
I'm good. Well, as good as can be after that horrible annihilation of everybody's psyche yesterday. But no, good to be here. Good to be here.
That's the way. And secondly, we're speaking with the great Andre. How are you, mate?
I'm well. I've removed all sharp objects in the vicinity so I can get through the next hour.
That's it. Good work. Boys, well, what a debacle that was.
Yeah, that's one
Where
word.
to begin?
You have to start at the beginning of a week. I think the tone was set when we did everything possible to turn it from a Port home game into a quasi-Crows home game.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just another one of those things where at the time you think, oh yeah, well that's a good idea, that's a nice thing to do, and then it backfires and you go, nah, that was stupid.
That's
Much like the rest of the season, really.
that's exactly what it was. I mean, you know, many column inches and TV hours, radio hours have been devoted to the absolute tragedy that befell the football community, and you know, everybody came together and were unified in grief for what was a fantastic football man at both clubs. But I think, as far as where we were concerned, I think we got up emotionally for the Collingwood game. We had the win, and I think just the foible of the draw meant we had to play the Crows next up, and of course everything rolled over to that game. And unfortunately, I think one team was amped to play at Adelaide Oval for the first time in however long, and we'd already done that, and here we are.
Should we go straight into our love and hate and get that out the way, I guess you could say?
Yep.
Andre, do you want to start us off?
Well, it's pretty much what we've just said. My hate would have to be that this week has been the pinnacle, or more accurately, the depths of our season, how we've slowly taken everything that we've built up over the last 2 years to getting back to being Port Adelaide and have jettisoned it into space, into the sun, and then blown it up further for good measure. So we like to make fun of the Crows of being 50 shades of bland, but that's the direction the club's been heading this year off field, and it's rolled over onto on field.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And do you have a love of some description?
I'd have to say it's Chad Wingard. It's just the numbers he's been pulling all season, but especially the last 6 weeks is, it seems to be the worse the club's been going, the harder he's been trying to pull us out of it, and he's just not getting the support. I mean, if again another 20 possession, 2+ goal game, and if no one else in the league is getting that. If he played for a Victorian side, he'd be getting column inches every week, and he'd be a smoky for the Brownlow. And yet, they get other Muppets interstate and within this state saying he's not even deserving of being in the All-Australian squad, let alone being picked. You seem to have to scratch your head sometimes.
Yeah, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, I think there's only Buddy and Josh Kennedy that have kicked more goals than him in the last 2 months. So he's in absolute career best form at the moment, and will fully deserve his All-Australian Guernsey when he gets it. And if we had been winning some more games, he would have been a smoky for the Brownlow.
Yep.
He's the only player in the league who's averaging more than 20 possessions and 2 goals. I mean, he's
for a long
basically
time.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically peak Stephen Johnson or peak Paul Chapman when Geelong were winning 20 games a year. And yet, you see Muppets on social media whenever, Lloydie does his rolling All Australian team saying, what's Wingard done? He's been inconsistent, he's been average, he hasn't done anything. And it's like, hang on a minute. He's absolutely dominating in a team that, is just poor. So,
As I say, he hasn't missed getting a goal in was it all year, and it's been like it's the only, along with Homsch until probably this week, the only one who's turned up each week.
Tribey, your love and hate, mate?
I think I said it all today on the forum. I thought it was going to be cathartic and I'd feel better, but I still don't. I was at the Game Day Village after the game with fellow Big Footy posters Truth and Gillian Batty. Shout out to Gillian Batty.
The Bat.
Old G Bat. But we were there drowning our sorrows, and Timmy Geneva came over, and we had a bit of a chat, and Timmy Geneva was positive as always. Good on him. But we just have this feeling that, as Andre said, what's happened to the club? It just feels like all the good work of the past 2 years is quickly draining away, and it's feeling a lot like that old 2010, 2009, 2012 even, just that, what are we doing? Where are we headed? Yes, we've got some good young players, but the bulk of the list looks shot to a large degree. And you've just got to wonder, with Jay Schultz about to ride into the sunset, a lot of our players, Westhoff is 28, Carlisle's 28. We've got a lot of guys who are our key guys who we rely on, look like they're not going to get any better from here. And did we fire our best shot last year? We kept talking about how we were the third youngest list in the league, but when you look at who our prime movers and our key movers and shakers are, I think really potentially last year could have been our one shot, and I think we could well have blown it.
Yeah, I think we've still got till the end of next year to win one, and then we really need to start finding some more players and some younger guys standing up and find something resembling a key forward under the age of 56, and then hopefully we'll be all right.
Yeah. I'm not so concerned about Carlisle. I think Cleary is coming along well. So I think, down back, Trengrove, Homsch, Cleary, I think that end of the ground, and we've still got an overabundance of halfback flankers. It's not a concern. We're still short a good inside mid. Is the other big one. I mean, we obviously all want to keep position forward, and if we could pick only one player, that would what we'd all grab. But just again, we'd be spanked at the clearances, and it's been a problem all this year, and it was a problem all last year. The only difference was really last year is everyone wasn't clogging back the corridor, and we had White and Pollock able to break the lines, and everything clicked. But it's been an ongoing problem at the club for a long time.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem is it's almost Groundhog Day of 2009, 2010. We've got a really, on paper we've got a really solid defence. We have got a couple of elite young players, but Jay Schultz looks like the last days of Warren Treadray. We've still got, as you said, we've got an overabundance of flankers. It just feels like we've done this before. The skinny, undersized bodies. We're not running over team. Well, we did try to run over the Crows yesterday, but generally our fourth quarters have been poor this year. It just feels like Groundhog Day, and that's probably part of the problem, is that any other team could probably ride out this blip, but for those of us, we all survived the horrors that was the late Williams era and the Primus era, and I think a lot of us are having the flashbacks to those terrible, terrible years.
In a lot of ways, it's actually worse, because in 2011, 2012, we trudged along as a long-suffering 10 or 15,000, and we knew we were going to be served up a steaming pile of crud on a plate. But we thought, that's how good the team is, in inverted commas. We had a poor coach in Primus. We had a fitness coach who found his accreditation at the bottom of a packet of Wheat Bix. We we didn't have the off-field support because we didn't have any sponsors to pay for anything. But now we've had a good year in 2014 and even had a couple of flashes in 2015, first quarter versus Collingwood and Hawthorn, where we could see this is what the players can do, but they're not doing it. So I think it's in a lot of ways it's been more frustrating and worse than 2011 and 12, because then you were resigned. Now you just want to bang your head against the desk and go, what on earth are you doing?
You've just got to hope that this is our sort of Geelong 2006 moment, and we will come out next year firing and understanding what a mistake this year has been from start to finish.
I mean, just on like saying about what the players are capable of, I think we've seen from where they have had those flashes of brilliance that for all our other problems of missing White and Pollock for their ability to break the lines, which has been a big one, for the poor selections and misuse of a sub, and the questions around have we gone too far for the soccer player body versus AFL footballers. I think the biggest problem is still above the shoulders, because you look at what we've been able to pull out. Even last week, first quarter versus Collingwood, when the players were playing on raw emotion, they weren't thinking and they were just playing on instinct. We just saw that they are still at their best a top 4 team. But as soon as they start to think about the game, they start second-guessing themselves, and they either panic dispose of it too quickly, or they look around for options and they get caught and get holding the ball, or end up picking the wrong option. It's 90% of it is above the shoulders, I think, with these guys.
Yeah. Did you have a love, Tribey?
I had no love whatsoever. Yesterday was just like apocalypse now from start to finish. I don't know. There was no. I almost feel like Graham Corns and Chris McDermott after that 1990 grand final. Where you go into the Crows room and you say, there was no logical reason why you should have won that game. They didn't have Brad Crouch. They didn't have Mitch Grigg. They didn't have Rory Sloane. They lost their best defender, Daniel Talia, to concussion in the second quarter. And how did we respond? We just, coming off a 10-day break, yes, we came back at them. We gave up a 30-point lead at three-quarter time and almost held them in. But there's no way they should have beaten us, let alone get 6 goals up at various stages. It's just you've really got to wonder what we're thinking in terms of coaching, mindset, and everything in between. Like the minute Talia went off, does every other coach in the league not pragmatically go, okay, how about we put Schultz and Westhoff deep and try to bomb it onto their heads and really put them under pressure? We didn't do that. They had Jake Lever. They had I couldn't even name their other key defenders that they have down there. We just did not test them at all. We just insisted on doing this chippy, surgical, poor execution, drop it on a dime, forward entries, when any other team in the league would have been an air raid every time they got forward. Look, that's my love. That's my love.
That's a good love.
Is that I'm now full of hatred. Yeah.
Well, that's the story of the year. It's the same one when we played Sydney. Instead of they have an injury, and instead of we exploit it, they put on a run of goals. It's like if you're an opposition coach, you'd want to arrange for one of your players to run into one of ours and get subbed off at quarter time, because we'd just roll over in sympathy and let them walk all over us when it happens. It's like, okay, you're losing a game, that's one thing, but how when the oppositions keep on losing key players, we start playing worse? It's I don't know. It's inexplicable.
I'm not sure I can top that love, to be honest. That's a pretty good love. But my love was the crowd, 54,500. It got demoted to 53,500 today with the SMA staff getting chopped off. But man, what a ridiculous crowd. I didn't think we would get that high a crowd. And when that came up on the screen, it was just like, you can't be serious. That's ridiculous.
No, it didn't surprise me. You had every man his dog. Pretty much everyone wanted to get there, and unlike a home game for either side, you're always going to have pretty much everyone who's a stadium member turn up. So that one wasn't a shock.
It was certainly a shock when they showed 54,500. I'm thinking, isn't capacity only 53? Like, what's going on here?
Just to add to that, in terms of the crowd figure, you could basically call it a hate in that RAA have advertised the fact that if we get over 50,000 all year, that one lucky fan would win 10 grand. But apparently they decided to give it to charity.
Yeah.
Like, that's all well and good, and I admire the sentiment. But if you're using that as a promotional tool all year, could you not have found another $10,000 to give to one of us forlorn folk who had to sit through that tripe?
I'm surprised they didn't give it to the Adelaide Football Club, to be honest.
It's so true. Oh, no.
Look, my hate this week is the fact that the club has ruined close games for me. I mean, how many times have we chased a win, got within a kick over the last couple of years, and then just not been able to get that extra goal that we need to get in front, and it just does my head in. And it's pointless jumping up and down and screaming in the stands, hoping that you get that extra goal, because you just know it's not going to happen. So, you know, I think it was, 1-5 to start the last quarter, certainly doesn't help, and, you know, we shot ourselves in the foot again by goal kicking, and I'd rather we lose by 20 or 30 points than go through this sort of mental anguish every second week of getting within a kick and losing again and again and again, just like we did in 2008.
Again,
I agree.
It's a mental one. It's a fear of failure. They get behind. They, stop thinking, okay, we're going to lose from here. I've got to worry about what I'm doing. They just switch to, attacking football. They get to within a goal or two and they start thinking, the game's on the line again. They start, overthinking it again. And I think that's why we see that they get behind, they get close, but then they just can't take that final step because they just start reverting and heading back into their shells. It's you can just see it happening. You can almost see them that the cogs start turning over once they get within that kick of drawing level or getting ahead.
Yeah,
there was nothing surer than Nathan Cracker, ostensibly our coolest head and our smoothest kick into the forward 50, absolutely shanking that off the side of the boot in the centre of the ground when he was about 5 metres clear. Like, I think he prefaced the kick with a little bit of a fumble too. Like he could have potentially grabbed it and taken off, and even maybe had a ping from 50, and yet he absolutely shanked it off the side of the boot. And you could feel everybody, every one of the teal persuasion just deflate like a burst Nigel Mansell tyre coming down to Ketterville Terrace when that ball came off the side of the boot. Honestly, I'm choking.
That was the moment. That was the moment where Ralph Wiggum's heart broke, frame by frame, yes. Right then. Well, let's go on and talk about the result yesterday. I guess it's the result that the AFL world wanted, the Crows winning an epic, memorable showdown. I guess if you're a Crow fan, it was memorable. By 3 points, 18 goals 8 to 17 goals 11. Ryder, Wingard and Gray kicked 3 each, and Schultze as well, whilst Boak and Lobie kicked 2. I guess to start with, how were you guys feeling before the game? Were you confident or were you a little bit concerned?
No, it's one again that was the story of 2015 on paper. It should have been our game. They were coming off a 2 days less break. They were coming back from the trip to WA, which is, tends to take it out of the sides. We were fresh. We'd drawn the line under our tribute, but then as soon as the talk started, winding back everything that makes our home game, and then Boat comes out and basically says, we're not going to be rough to Adelaide. If they tackle us, we'll give them a hug. You start worrying at that point in time. I didn't think they were going to come out. I thought it was always a risk that it was going to come out quickly like they did, but yeah, I thought we'd still put up more of a fight than we did. But it's also the story of our year that despite the opposition playing so badly, we got, as I say, that close, but then again, we couldn't just take that final step and get up in a close one.
Yeah.
I was absolutely confident. I seriously, even though all the warning signs were there, as you said, Andre, we were scaling back the home festivities. We were, Travis Boak came out with those ill-advised sound bites, whether that was towing the party line because David Koch had got in their ear. I don't know. I wouldn't put it past him. But apart from all that, I still looked at it calmly and rationally. The 10-day break versus their 8-day break, coming back from Perth. West Coast had absolutely smashed them. There was talk that because of, obviously the tragedy, they hadn't trained properly as you'd expect an AFL team to train. It was our home game. We had a strong lineup. We'd just come off a good win against Collingwood. There was no logical reason why they should have got anywhere near us, let alone smack us for the majority of the game before falling over the line. And I ignored all of that. I was just calmly sipping bevies at the game day village, absolutely blissfully unaware of the 3 hours of rancid baby poo that was about to be served up on a platter. And what more can you say? I mean, we're going to obviously go into the game in a little bit finer detail coming up, but just in terms of the general mood of the game, I mean, I know, Macca, you were a little bit pessimistic about, what was to come because obviously we've been burnt before, but I genuinely thought that we had that in the bag, and I thought we were going to rise above all the distractions and just crush them. But, we didn't, and once again we're sitting here forlorn and confused and burnt.
As you said, I was pretty concerned pre-game. I said it on the podcast, I said it on the forum during the week and on game day as well, that I was a bit concerned that we'd get thrashed. I thought we might see Adelaide come out absolutely firing. They had everything to play for. They had finals on the line. They had, the tribute to Phil Walsh, and we'd already sort of won our game as a tribute to Phil Walsh, and they would have wanted to have made amends for the performance that they had out west and the result that they had there. So I was concerned that the Crows would come out absolutely firing and, be 6 or 7 goals up at quarter time, and we just wouldn't be able to peg them back. And I guess that didn't really happen, but there were periods of time where it did look like we were going to get thrashed, and they got out to about 36 or 39 point lead at one stage during the third quarter, and you thought, God, this is just an absolute nightmare that's come true here. But I don't know. For me, my main concern was making sure that we came out of the blocks absolutely firing, hitting them hard, and not allowing them to get that sort of breakaway lead in the first sort of 10-15 minutes. But as it ended up, they kicked 3 goals in pretty quick succession whilst we were still packing up the prayer mat and the peace pipe.
It was always going to be an emotional first quarter. I mean, you'd think after our players had come out the week before firing on all cylinders with the emotion of it, that they knew how the Crows players were going to be. They just experienced themselves a week earlier. I mean, how could it possibly be a surprise of how the Crows were going to attack the game?
We say it all the time about Port Adelaide, how in the first 5 minutes how the game's going to turn out. And I think this was another example of knowing by their actions in the first sort of 5 to 10 minutes that we were in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even in the last 2 years, it's pretty much been our time in the AFL. You can always tell, like you say, within the first 5 to 10 minutes, with very few exceptions, how we're going to go in a game. I mean, you really have to think back a long time for, where we've had a game where we've started really badly and then we've completely turned it around. It's got to be a few years now.
If it wasn't for Boak, Gray, Wingard and Homch and Ryder yesterday, we would legitimately be playing off for a meat platter in like a Division 6 amateur league, the way our team is at the minute. You look at the numbers that Boak, Wingard and Gray put up. I mean, they are premiership numbers. 20 odd touches, 3 goals. Boak had 11 score involvements. Ryder absolutely looked like the recruit we expected to get in terms of his dominance. I mean, those guys were absolutely playing at a silverware winning level, and it just goes to show, every week we've had probably 10 to 15 guys all throughout the team, not just the bottom guys who keep on being dropped to the SRFL and then rotated back through, your Mitchells, your Archies, your Moores, but, your likes of Ebert, Wines was down. We've had some really serious players from week to week to week just put in absolute stinkers. And if it wasn't for that top 4 or 5 players absolutely playing out of their skins, we'd be lucky to have a win on the board, really.
Yeah. Our cream has certainly delivered this year, and we've just had no sort of underlay underneath that have been prepared to sort of step up on a consistent basis. And we've had players sort of flitter in and out of form here and there. Youngie had a good sort of 3 or 4 weeks to start the season, and then sort of dropped off dramatically. And Cracker might have done the same. Impy's done the same. Probably Hartlett's. We've all sort of questioned his form at some point during the year as well. And I don't know. It's just frustrating, and we just look completely underprepared to cope with what Adelaide would bring from the first bounce. And for me, once again, it was just a matter of poor skills, poor decision making, complete lack of composure with the ball. Stupid things like Cam O'Shea running 20 metres over the mark to corral a player after he's just taken a mark. I mean, it's a 50-metre penalty every day of the week. I just don't understand your thought process on why you're doing this. And then he goes and falls over and drops the ball and gives up another goal 10 minutes later as well. It was just, he had a nightmare game, and he certainly wasn't alone, I guess.
The one in the last quarter where he fell over when he had 2 guys on either side of him, and he kind of wrong-footed himself, fell over, and the Crows immediately got a goal from it. I think that was that like 4 or 5 minutes into the last quarter. I mean, that was probably...
I think it was in the third.
It was in the third quarter, but we were really coming at them then, and the Crows were really wavering. I mean, they look like a punch-drunk boxer at that stage, and had he not handed that to them on a platter, we probably would have run them over in all likelihood. I mean, you're loath to isolate a single moment or a single player, but that goal came at a time when we had all the momentum. The Crows were absolutely dead in the water from where I was sitting. And that goal gifted to them on a platter at a time when we were just about to start. It was basically the last quarter steamroller probably would have arrived about 20 minutes earlier than it did. You've just got to look at Cam O'Shea and think, why can he not maintain a level of consistency like he showed against Collingwood the week before? He was a cyborg the week before. He did not put a foot wrong. And this week he came out, and similar to a guy he's been compared to before, Michael Pettigrew, the gap between his best and his worst is probably the widest I've seen in our AFL experience.
Yeah.
That's a pretty fair statement. Yeah. Well, that's a especially indictment on O'Shea, but I mean, it's a concern across the team. We have a players at their peak. So many are great, but they've just now got the number of games into them over the last 2 years where you'd just be expecting that when they have a down game, that it's just not as down as they are. I mean, that's really the thing you'd be expecting is, okay, yes, you have a down game, but you find a way to work into the game. You do the tackles, you do the 1%ers, but we just have players, when they're off, they might as well not be out there at all.
When we did decide to play football, we did actually look pretty decent. I'm talking about the end of the second quarter, we kicked 3 or 4 goals in a row. That 5-minute period in the third quarter where we just went bang, 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 and started to get the ball out of the middle and really got ourselves back into the game when it looked all but over. But just as it came, it went just as quick. And that's the worst part about our side at the moment is that, as you said earlier, Andre, our best is good enough. We've shown pretty much every week these periods of play where we look absolutely unstoppable, but then we just revert back to this sort of, I don't know if it's sort of being comfortable with themselves or how they're going, but they just begin to sort of second guess themselves, and the mistakes come, the poor decision making comes, and the poor skills come as well.
So we've got to be masters of killing momentum. It's like, how many times we see, we'd be streaming down, we get the ball, we're streaming down to attack, and somehow we manage to pick out a 3-on-1 or a 2-on-1, or opposition players just on their own, and just, especially that kick into the forward, half forward area, it just seems to be the spot on the ground where we really, really struggle week to week. We just seem to pick out where the opposition has numbers. It's and the worst one, it's often where we seem to have a player free, 20 or 30 metres away. Yet somehow every week we seem to pick out the bad option. It's yeah, I'll be pulling out my hair if I hadn't already done all of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's needy, getting a great contested ball and then handballing it straight to a free Crow player. Like, you could just tell that the Crow player said, needy, and he just handballed it straight to him. And they got a goal out of that. Impey, I reckon, made 2 or 3 errors which cost goals. Brad Ebert just turned the ball over all game, despite the fact that he took a number of courageous marks, dropping back in defence. And Matty Broadbent, he's another one whose skills have to come under question, and we know he's a great long kick. A lot of people sort of said that Jay Nash was a great long kick, but in the end they might have a long kick, but when it goes 25 metres over the leading forward's head every single time, you just got to start questioning, what they're doing out there.
Yeah. It's sort of one, we can't seem to get a player who's a complete package. We've got, say, like Broadbent and Ebert, who are, you can usually rely on, to take the mark, a contested mark, but their disposal is shocking. Then we've got some other players with good disposal, but, they'll drop the marks, they're not getting enough of the ball. It's like, can we find a player that, can do both? We don't seem to be having too many of them this year.
So what's the issue with our midfield? Why can we not win clearances out of the midfield? Is it the cattle that we've got out there? Is it setups? Is it strategy? Or is it a lack of composure and motivation out there?
I would choose answer D, all of the above. I mean, it has to start with Lobby. I mean, 4 out of 5 showdowns, it's I think pre-game he goes up to Jacobs and says, take that lube out of your pocket. You're not going to need it. You can take me dry. It's it's 4 out of 5 showdowns. He absolutely annihilates them and gives Lobby his worst games. I mean, as Lobby had a worse game than he's had against Jacobs in 2 or 3 showdowns. I don't think he's had anything like as bad a games against other sides, despite having poor games this year. It's just he seems to save his worst for the showdowns 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5 times, and he was hitting the Crows players on the chest repeatedly yesterday. I mean, and then from there the coaches, either they backing him to get better as the game go on, or they missed that this was happening. They didn't adjust the centre square setups to play to losing tap or opposition getting first use of the ball. You seem to be expecting him to come good and get it, and it didn't happen, and they were waltzing it out all game.
Yeah, the thing with the centre clearances has been an issue all year, and while I think that centre clearances on their own can be rather overrated, because obviously, as we saw yesterday, our poor skill level going into half forward is just as bad as losing a centre clearance. I mean, the famous stat that I always pull out is that we actually won the centre clearance, or actually won the clearances in the 2007 grand final, 34-30. So you can't put too much stock into clearances, but when we had the pre-season showdown, there was a moment when I think the centre square contained Jay Schultz, I think it might have been Jake Need, Nathan Steinburner and Elijah Ware. It may as well have been, given how pointless these guys were. They weren't going to be part of our midfield rotation during the year. And I just think, for whatever reason, whether this is the influence of, having Walsh go to the Crows, having Voss come in and impart his philosophy, we've clearly gone for a whole different setup and package in especially centre clearance situations, and I don't think we've got a handle on it. Now, whether, we've talked about the Burgess factor and whether we've slimmed players down too much, I don't think, just on the eye test, I don't think the likes of Boak and Wines have been able to stand up in tackles anywhere near as well as they did last year, especially in that prelim against Hawthorn, when the likes of Boak just seemed to be able to break tackle after tackle after tackle and plough ahead. But I don't know what the answer is. I mean, as you've said, guys, Jacobs just absolutely rogered Mr. Lobie. And how many times did the likes of Richard Douglas, who, all right, he's a good player, but he's got the most smackable head in the Crows team. How many times did Richard Douglas just run it out with absolute ease, looking like an all-Australian midfielder? And we didn't seem to have any response, be that, put a man on him at the stoppage, pack one side of the stoppage. We just seem to just rinse and repeat every single time we lost out of the middle. And our
concentration's not there. Our
That's not.
concentration, our mindset's not there, and it doesn't all come down to Lobie, and probably sounds like we're having a bit of an unfair crack at him, but I mean, the rest of the midfielders have to take control of this as well. If they know that Lobie's not going to be winning hitouts, which he never does against the Crows, they've got to adjust to that. They've got to be more on edge. They've got to know exactly what's going on. And I don't think outside of Boak and Gray, any of our midfielders were in the game at any stage. I mean, Ebert did some nice things dropping back, but Wines had probably his worst game. Hartlett didn't even get in the midfield at any stage of the game, I don't think. And at one stage, I think we even had Westhoff and Broadbent in there just to try something completely different, but I'm not even sure that worked either.
I was waiting for Jackson Trengove to be released into the ruck at some stage, just to show some level of combat against Jacobs, but it never happened.
I mean, just what is going on with Trengrove and rucking? It's we know he's not enthusiastic about it, but we've just had games this year where, say we don't want to pick on Lobie exclusively, where he's just been pantso and, just 10 minutes of throwing Trengrove into, jump into Jacobs, try and, wrestle back some sort of momentum, change it up, but we're just not doing it. It's just, it hasn't worked for most of the game, and yet we just keep on going with the losing tactic. It's game day coaching is yet another area where it's just hasn't clicked this year.
Perhaps
the stupid thing is that Trengove in the ruck has won us numerous games over the last couple of years, and it was a showdown where this whole sort of half began in the Wingard Montfrees showdown, where Trengove went into the ruck in the last quarter and completely changed the course of the game. Happened against Freo last year as well. So if he doesn't want to be playing in the ruck, I'd be saying too bad, basically.
Exactly. Perhaps he could come up with some Shiler shin guards, because this, honestly, I just find the notion ridiculous. He's arguably the best part-time burst ruck weapon in the league when he goes in there.
No doubt. Pound for pound, he absolutely would be.
Oh, he's aggressive. He's athletic. He's got a huge reach, which absolutely compensates for the fact as a ruckman he's a little bit undersized. And to just have him sitting back there in defence where he's just been okay. I mean, I don't think he's been great this year. But to just have him sitting back in defence while Lobie gets slaughtered, and we've got to rob Peter to pay Paul by moving an informed rider who was absolutely playing brilliantly as a key forward, to have to sacrifice, the forward line to be able to get a ruckman in there who can actually compete against Jacobs, when we've got Trengove sitting back ostensibly, I don't know whether he refuses to ruck or he said to Ken, look, maybe my body's not up to rucking, but, desperate times call for desperate measures. And, if he doesn't want to ruck, that's fine. He can do something else in September and we can watch the rest of the league play.
Let's just say no one's expecting him to become, a permanent second ruck, but it's got to be every third game or fourth game, we need to pull that out for a quarter, then, he should be willing to do it.
Yeah. 10, 15 minutes once a month when, the season's on the line, I don't think is asking too much, to be honest.
Exactly.
So the form of Westhoff, he came off a career best first half last week, 22 touches, and pretty much led the way in our victory against Collingwood. And I think he had 2 touches to half time this week. What went wrong for Justin?
Oh, it's just been like a lot of the team. He's just inconsistent. He just can't seem to have the that he's got that ceiling is so high. But again, it's yet another player where if it's it's not clicking. It's just, he might as well not be out there.
He's one of those players who you just want to take, the brain of, say, Warren Treadway or Dean Brogan and put it in his skull. Because he has all the attributes to be a brilliant... I mean, he's pretty much a one-of-a-kind player in the AFL in that he can play literally any position. He can play ruck, he can play midfield, he can defend, he can play forward. He can do everything. And when he switched on, as we saw it in the front end of 2013, when he just went on that tear where for 4 or 5 weeks he looked like arguably the most dynamic player in the competition. When he's absolutely in form and the mood takes him, he is one of the most destructive players in the competition. But as you see, Andre, when he's down, he is just an absolute and utter non-entity. Like I would have taken an 18 disposal, 5-mark, 1 goal quiet game from Justin, and you'd think, oh, yeah, that's about par, coming off a really good game against Collingwood. But he was just completely anonymous.
Yeah.
Well,
playing against Jake Lever, who's played 6 games, and Cole Hartigan, who's played 19 games. Like, this is a 28-year-old guy that's closing in on 200 games, and he's getting absolutely pantsed by a couple of rookies.
Coming off a 10-day break. Like, it's not like you could argue he was sore or he's coming off a short break. Oh, I'm choking on my own rage, boys.
I mean, then when you think there's why not if with Lobe being pants, there's why not put Hoff into the ruck and see if he could have had an impact there if Trengrove wasn't wanting to go there. See if you could at least both of them aren't doing anything. See if you can at least swap them around and see if one of them then starts performing in the other position. I mean, it was worth a try. It's just yeah, but I don't know. It's like again, Hoff just says, like you say, there's so much potential. He could be, the player that just gets all the press, but yeah, it's a once or twice a year job for that level.
Yeah. Moving on, Brendan Archie, he got his I think his second start for his career so far, and unfortunately didn't take that chance. He was just a complete non-entity out there.
Yeah, I think some of that was a bit weird. Is like that. What was he doing? Been playing forward for a fair portion of a game. It's when we've been spanked in the middle. Why not bring him in as an extra large body in the centre? To run into the centre square rather than sitting up in the forward line, basically twiddling his thumbs watching the game. I think it was just a strange sort of almost flashbacks of Nick Stevens to the forward pocket, so he doesn't get tagged. Against Sydney, sort of a situation, taking a player and not playing to his strengths. I mean, he had a poor game, but I think it was also it's not all his fault. I think he was very poorly utilised as a player yesterday.
Yeah, it just sort of raised my eyebrows when he sort of started up forward and sort of stayed up forward for quite a long period of time, and it's a position where he's kind of got lost at SANFL level in the past as well, and he's such a weapon in the midfield, and that handball and his ability to hunt the ball, and I just felt that would have been a lot more useful, him playing at the stoppages on the weekend, but just didn't happen.
Especially when we've entrusted him with a start. Like we've said to Brendan Archie, all right, we'll give you the start. You've got the big body. We've been crying out for an extra big body in the midfield, and we don't play him there. And surprise, surprise, the Crows smashes in the clearances, and meanwhile, Brendan Archie's still marooned on a half-forward flank. I mean, at some stage, and he's been a breath of fresh air, and we love him, but at what point do we not start to ask questions of Ken Hinkley? Michael Voss has come under the blowtorch at various times, I think unfairly. I think people were roasting him and using him as a scapegoat after the losses in the first 2 games. But our record over the last, 25, 26, 27 games is diabolical. It's diabolical. We've won 7 of our last 15 games at Adelaide Oval, so it's not like we've had a rough run of away games. We're just now getting to the stage where we're losing games that we shouldn't lose, let alone not being able to compete with the big boys. And I think some of the moves, like not putting Trengove into the ruck. Why not? Because Trengove said he doesn't want to. Like what's going on, Ken? I think it's time that we, nothing drastic. nothing drastic. I'm not calling for his head or anything like that. But I think, if there is a review at the end of the season, I think we've got to review everything. And I think certain sacred cows who up to this point have had a pretty smooth ride and I think an extended honeymoon period because we have done so well in 13-14. I think we've really got to put the blowtorch on some performance, and it begins with the football department.
Yep, that's a fair call.
I disagree there.
It's almost got a bit of the Neil Craigs about him, where you just almost expected success to happen, and then sort of come year 3, some sort of quirky, player movements and that sort of thing came into it, and you started to really sort of question what was going on with the Crows. But I don't know. Hopefully, it's just a down year, and we can come back bigger and better than ever next year. But certainly, I think it's certainly fair that some questions start to be asked. Absolutely. When you're a premiership favourite and you lose to Brisbane and you lose to Carlton and you lose to the Crows who don't have a coach and all this sort of stuff, questions have to be asked. And I hope we go through a really big end of season review because it's absolutely needed.
We were 4.5 goals down to Melbourne, remember, in Alice Springs before we flicked the switch and kicked 9 or 10 goals in a row. Like, if you go over our season with a fine-tooth comb, and I mean, you can't be too negative because obviously you're going to win some close ones and you're going to lose some close ones. Happens every year. But if you look at things coldly, if Hawthorn had have run us down, if we hadn't have got over the top of North Melbourne, I think that the Crows smashed us for clearances in the first showdown, and we ended up using our efficiency, ironically, to get over the top of them. I mean, if we had have been even more unlucky than we've been, I mean, we could be staring down the barrel of maybe a 2 or a 3 win season. It's really been that dire.
Yeah, but I mean, on the flip side of that, it's like the one of the close ones. If Carlisle hadn't come off against Fremantle, we likely would have started the season with a win. And if we'd managed to not throw away by poor kicking against numerous games this year, we'd have 2 or 3 more, and we'd at least be in the bottom reaches of the 8. So sort of a some up, some down there. But yeah,
it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. But I mean, you sort of like look at results, and I think the thing which, again, I think where it's showing it's all mental is that, with the exception of that, round 2 against Sydney, where we just come off the game against Fremantle, and we still had a heap of underdone players, and then we made the most inexplicable selection choice that I think any of our coaches have made in our history in the AFL of bringing Redden in. That against the top teams, if we haven't won, we've at least been able to get close to them. Our superpower this year seems to be see how good the opposition is and play just that little bit worse than them. It's so look at how we played against the top teams.
We definitely played to the level of the opposition,
and we just fall short. And if we'd played at those abilities against the likes of Brisbane and Carlton, we would have smashed them by 10 goals. But we play them, we drop ourselves right back down to their level. It's the thing which just drives me, I think, nuts about this year, is that we're not even a consistent level. I've been we're this bad. It's like there's the opposition, we'll just be that little bit worse, so they beat us.
It happened with the West Coast and Geelong games as well. I mean, they were horrible losses.
Yeah. I mean, at least West Coast have turned out to be a bloody good team, so I feel less anguished about that than I did at the time. But when you're up by 3 or 4 goals against West Coast at your own home ground, you should be winning those games. And Geelong, we just didn't turn up at all.
Well, I mean, the whole one against Geelong, it was again that we had our chances, and we had. Well, we were in the lead, and we had plenty of a ball, and again we butchered it, getting it forward, and they didn't, miss taking their chances when they had them, and that's the story of our season. We've had our chances, but we haven't grabbed them, and we've let the opposition grab theirs.
If I could have one wish, it would be to be able to take pinking shears to Cam Guthrie's long sleeve Guernsey. I just want to take those sleeves off. Yeah. There's something about them, isn't there?
Interesting. Yeah. I like it. Plus, he looks like Tim Canterbury from The Office, but
he does.
That as well. So how did we feel when Matty Lobe took 2 contested marks? I know I had to sit down just to compose myself for a little bit because I thought I was going to get vertigo and fall over.
I know, yeah, like the first one. After the first one, you go, yeah, that's interesting, and you had to take 5 minutes to compose yourself. But yeah, and then when he took a second one, I was like, yeah, I almost fell off my seat into the row in front of me. But hopefully that's not enough to get him a game next week. But even that, two marks a game, we shouldn't be falling off our seats there. It should be like, that should be a minimum standard as a 200 odd centimetre, 100 kilo, ruckman. For a player of his size, he has all the physical presence of a grandma on a Zimmer frame. It's like, how can a guy so big be so soft out in the field? When it comes to marking, when it comes to tackling and the like, gets his body in there, he's not afraid of a contact. So it's another one where you scratch your head. How can he not be afraid of body contact, yet he's so bad at taking a mark?
He's averaging a massive 1.6 marks a game so far this year.
Yeah, I'm not a technical expert, but he just seems to be one of these tall players who seems to be very, very upright at all times. So when he approaches a marking contest, he's not prepared to kind of fall forward or fall backward or lean backward or use his body to kind of coax the ball into his grasp. He kind of stands bolt upright, and that, I think, leaves him vulnerable to being spoiled or basically knocked off the ball. When you see a good key forward, they tend to leap forward, dive, fall backwards, lean into their opponent. I don't think Lobe does that. He's got this weird gait, and he's got this weird position that he gets himself into when he approaches a marking contest. And I don't think it lends itself, unless he clunks it with like a one grab take in his hands. I don't think he's quite in a position to take as many marks as he should. As you say, he's a massive unit, massive man. And for us to be, we joke about it, but I was exactly the same. When Lobe took one of those contested, I was like, wow, it's like getting $50 on one of those rip-up bingo scratches. You're like, that's not supposed to happen, You're just absolutely surprised, like it's a bolt from the blue. And really, for a so-called premiership contender, for your number one ruckman to be surprising his own fans by taking a contested mark, it's unacceptable.
And then he takes the second one and slots a goal from the Eddie Dingle pocket.
Yes.
What could go wrong?
It was unbelievable when that went through. I didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. On a few more positive notes, we've spoken about how good Wingard was. Boakey was unbelievable. Ryder was really good. Robbie Gray had one of his best games for the year as well. And Hamish Hartlett, for the second week in a row, I thought was wonderful out there.
Yeah, I think he had a good game. I think Hammer cops a lot of flack, and I think for the early part of the season it was well deserved. But he's starting to come into some good form the last few weeks, and he's and I think again, yesterday, especially probably in the first half, he faded. I think a bit after half time, he was one of the key players in the back half. Sort of keeping us from being run over even more than we were.
I enjoy Hartlett off of half-back, and as good as he has been over the past couple of weeks, I still think he is a bit of a Salopecian waste back there. I think, as you said at the start, Macca, Hartlett didn't even go into the middle at any stage, even when we were getting smashed. And you've got to wonder what the rationale, again, is with that. When, we've seen his lateral movement, he's hard at it, he can win a ball, he's got beautiful disposal. Can
his body cope with it?
Well, you know what, as we've said before, and as we used to say with Salopec, if his body doesn't cope with it, well, maybe we've just got to suck that up. Maybe we've got to roll the dice, as with Trengove in the ruck, and you know what? If he goes in there and his body breaks down, well, so be it. Polex did, and we're not going to play him as a halfback flanker.
But you sort of wonder if Hartlett, even if you not put him in the centre square, why can't he be played on the, like as an outside mid on the edge of a square, for the receive, and then he's got that long boot. We're having all the issues of getting it past that, wall we encounter each week on the opposition's half back line. Let him use his long kick, get it over there, get it onto the top of the square. See if we can have Hoff or Ryder or Schultz take a mark there instead of just chip to the pocket, and then we kick yet another point. We've got players.
His lack
who
of
do
goal
these
scoring
things.
has been one of the real issues this year, I think, and the way he's been used sort of more as a, I don't know, like almost in soccer terms, like a box-to-box sort of midfielder sort of thing. He's playing a little bit behind the ball and just not getting into goal-scoring position. And as you say, I've been banging on about this for about 4 years, where he's got this massive kick. He's got an incredibly accurate kick in front of goal from anywhere within 60 metres. And we play him in a back pocket and on a half-back flank more often than we do on a forward flank. And I just don't understand it, because he can take a pretty good mark and he can kick a goal from anywhere. So, I mean, he's only kicked 6 goals from 15 games this year. And I think last year he was going at a goal a game, I think. So that's been one of the real sort of disappointing downturns.
I think we just seem to be, not only is it a case that we have so many players down on form, but we just seem to be playing the players in the wrong positions so many times this year. And Hartlett's just, again, in one of those clear-cut cases where he's playing well, but like you say, he's not playing in the position where if he can have his best game and where he can have the game that's going to help the team the most.
And it's not like he's Stonewall Hartlett, where if we decide to switch him to the forward line, we're going to concede 20 goals. Well, didn't we do that yesterday? Why not shake things up? Why not try to make a move that, heaven forbid, you might put a game-breaking player with that weapon of a right boot into a dangerous position. Rather than have him floating around as a luxury behind play like some sort of quasi-Bob Murphy.
Tribey, you created a pretty epic thread on Big Footy today, and can you just sort of summarise your thoughts for those that are listening that aren't on the forum?
Basically, yesterday and all the sound bites during the week, it's really, and I'm not alone there. As I was writing this thing over the course of the morning, coming back to it, after I posted it, I looked at the game day thread and saw that a lot of people had said similar things. So I'm not alone here. But basically, it crystallised in my mind that, probably this year, you call it complacency, call it a desire to kind of be liked. You said before about trying to keep the feel-good, the feel-good story of Port Adelaide going. I just feel like David Koch, in particular, in terms of, and people have said, well, it's not David Koch who fumbles a ball. It's not David Koch who decides to miss a target. That's not what I was getting at. I think from the top down, I think there's basically been a mindset or a malaise sink in from David Koch in particular, where the Port Adelaide Football Club over the last couple of years got back to being that Port Adelaide Football Club that, stuff you, Port Adelaide first, we got the one club up, we're gonna get our reserve teams, we're gonna wear the prison bar jumper, we're never gonna give up, we're gonna play like Port Adelaide. That's what people want to say. And I think this year it's been more about, I don't know whether we've become addicted to the feel-good factor or being on the back pages as a good news story, but I just think from the top down, I think we're more concerned about being well-liked, inoffensive, endlessly apologetic for anything remotely negative that might come our way, be it one person behaving badly at the football, allegedly, one person behaving badly at the front of a hotel that's 10 minutes walk away from the footbridge, and I just think the team has become a byproduct of what the top brass want it to be. Andre said before, Travis Boak talking about putting the rivalry on hold and putting his arm around the Crows, and then the Crows turn around and say, oh, no, it's going to be war. We're going to go out there and smash in. And surprise, surprise, they played exactly like we thought they were going to play. We were meek, we were soft, I don't think we were, essentially soft at the ball, but I don't think we came with the desire to win the contest that the Crows did. And I think, be it complacency, be it we thought it was just going to happen this year as a natural symptom of the last couple of years, I just think Port Adelaide has become in terms of an overall club and a brand, I think Crows light. We want to be everybody's second favourite team. We want to be the team for all other South Australians, and this is what we didn't want to be. So,
yeah. It's a fair point because over the last, and it's probably only happened over the course of the off-season and this season in general. I mean, you think back to the final last year where the AFL said, nah, sorry, you can't wear your home Guernsey in your home final. And we said, well, screw you then, we want to wear our bloody prison bar. Like, that would never happen this year. Something's gone wrong over the off-season. I don't know if everyone sort of just expected this improvement to get us over the line and get into a grand final just to occur because of natural improvement, and we've got this third youngest list in the bloody AFL, which isn't even true, and all that sort of stuff. But you just feel that there's been a real sort of complacency across the entire club from top to bottom over the last sort of 9-10 months, and it's just not acceptable, and it's not really the Port Adelaide way.
No, it's not. And I mean, it's really hard for us, obviously, as Port Adelaide supporters, because we the whole Phil Walsh tragedy. Yes, football is just a game. Yes, it is just young men chasing a bit of leather around. What are us middle-aged chumps getting so fired up about it and all the rest of it? But at the end of the day, it is a professional football competition. It is dog eat dog. It is our goal to, move forward as a football club and win our share of football, win our share of dollars at the expense of all our rivals. And I just think David Koch, while he obviously had to toe a party line this week with everything that went down and obviously having to extend an olive branch in terms of sympathy and grief and all the rest of it, I don't know what he is trying to achieve with putting his arm around Rob Chapman while the Showdown trophy and the Phil Walsh medal were being delivered to the winning team. We all know, obviously, that it was heartbreaking and Phil Walsh was a great football man, etc. And there's David Koch, visibly almost in a look-at-me fashion, you could say, putting his arm around Rob Chapman to the point where Rob Chapman had a look on his face like, what's going on, as he looked off to the side. I just think we've just taken this desire to be the good guys to a ridiculously overwrought level. And I don't know where we go from here in terms of what we stand for. Look at West Coast. They were able to respect the occasion, but they still went out there and played to their best and ended up crushing them. Whereas we just seem to meekly accept that we would have to turn up and duly roll over and lose, give up our home game and everything in between because that's what everybody else wanted. And I'm not sure the old Port Adelaide would have done that.
I think some of it you have to wonder if they've taken the wrong lesson, so to speak, as to why our crowds have gone up the last couple of years. We've shifted across to Adelaide Oval. We've brought this great off-field game day experience, and you have to wonder, are they taking it that they think this is a reason why we've had this big jump in memberships, not that we've gone back to being one club and we're playing up until this year attacking Port Adelaide style football. I think are they taking us old school fans for granted and frying all their efforts at trying to hold on to what they think of these almost you could say theatre goers for without trying to insult fellow Port supporters, but the people that weren't there in our at our nadir and have come along now, we're doing well. They've taken the wrong idea that they've come out because we're putting on a good show off the ground rather than because we are Port Adelaide again. I think some of that you could also see almost in the Big Footy survey we've just had, that not Big Footy, the Big Port survey that we've just had, that some of these questions and sort of things we're looking at there, it's sort of almost treading some dangerous ground into they're forgetting how quickly the one club turned the club around, and almost already forgetting how that whole situation came about, and what it did to the club, and again almost like you say, heading down that Crow's Light or Southern Power sort of route to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's feeling like to me. And I know that I've had, when I wrote that post today, I've purposely let everybody have their say. I haven't responded to anybody because people don't have to agree with me. It was just how I felt. But I think people are getting there was a couple of criticisms of the post saying, well, where was this criticism last year when we were doing well? It's all about the team. It's like, no, this is, yes, it's got a little bit to do with the way the team is at the moment, but it's more to do with the general feel of the club. We tend to, as you say, we tend to be pandering to this catch-all generic theatre-goer, happy smiles, everybody, whether you're a home fan and away fan, everybody has a good time. Like, it's not the show. It's not, you're not getting on a Ferris wheel and eating some fairy floss and going home with a couple of show bags. We're going there to see the Port Adelaide Football Club compete on the national stage, which was the culmination of 120 odd years worth of hard work. We're not just here to rock up, pay our money, go home like good customers, and well, that's all right. Win, lose or draw, everybody's happy. Congratulations for coming into our home ground and, walking away with a famous win at Adelaide Oval, and, we'll rock up again in 2 weeks' time and watch it happen again. I just think I think there's just been a feel that the club is kind of moving into that kind of Adelaide Crows kind of, 50,000 members, 60,000 members, we're paying our bills, we're a good corporate citizen, we're inoffensive, we're liked by all, SA great, happy days. And I just, that might be okay for David Koch, who thinks that is a benchmark or a good KPI, but for you and me and Macca and the rest of the diehards who are having to sit through this horrendous season, there's just a feeling that the club's, I think, maybe pulling the wrong rein in many different ways.
And in some ways, it's even worse than being a Crow's Light. I think their biggest one is they massively overrate themselves and think that every year their 50 Shades of Vanilla are going to take them to a flag. Being everyone's second club, I think of St Kilda and Bulldogs. 50 years of nothing. Everyone says, I like the Saints, I like the Bulldogs, they're my second club. Because they're
people like teams that are inoffensive.
They're never going to be a threat.
That's why Woodville was everyone's second favourite SANFL team, and why Fitzroy was everyone's second favourite AFL team. It's because they're not a threat. They were never ever going to win anything, never going to make a grand final. They were struggling to make ends meet, and you feel sorry for them. That's why they're your second favourite team. And
no one has a second favourite team which is doing well and that a lot of people hate.
Exactly.
Second favourite teams are for teams which aren't going to threaten. And at the moment, we seem to be. Well, we're not this year because of how badly we've played. We're Bulldogs is everyone's second favourite team this year, but it's a loser market to chase. It doesn't get you anything. People don't go out and get memberships for second favourite teams.
No, that's right. I can understand from a administration point of view and how far back we were coming from that we needed to become likeable across the entire AFL again. And we achieved that through 2013 and we achieved that through 2014. This year was all about making a grand final and winning a premiership and being ruthless and going that extra mile and never giving up, and it just hasn't happened at all.
But I think we achieved that in 2013, 2014 by returning to being Port Adelaide. This year we seem to be trying to go that extra step to be likeable by moving away from Port Adelaide. So it's even the case that they're wanting to keep doing it, but they've, instead of continuing on from what was being successful the last 2 years, being everyone's second favourite team, it's like, that's worked. Now we'll just throw it out the window and we'll try and be everyone's second favourite team by, not offending anyone.
That's it. As I said a few weeks ago, screw being humble, screw being respectful, just be more Port Adelaide. That's what we want.
Yeah. Well, are Hawthorn doing this? Like, Hawthorn were very similar to us in that they had that massive period in the 80s, and then, similar to us when we fell in a heap in, 2011, 2012, and people were talking about us floating down the Ganges. I mean, Hawthorn Hawthorn 5 or 6 years after they had a period where they competed in 8 consecutive grand finals, almost merged as the junior partner with Melbourne. And they had to come from a long way back with Ian Dicker and, having to get the memberships up and having to open a market in Tasmania and forge that market. And now, Hawthorn, who remembers those days? Who remembers the days when they were absolutely falling in a hole? All people remember is Hawthorn winning a shitload back in the 70s and 80s, and now they are the unsociable Hawks, and they don't give a shit. They are ruthless. They are absolutely ruthless.
Spot on.
And they're completely, they are unapologetic. And, who cares about how crap they were in the mid-90s? And who cares how crap they were in 2004 when they got Jordan Lewis, Buddy Franklin and Jordan Roughhead out of the one draft because they only won 4.5 games or 3.5 games. Those days are completely forgotten. And all we remember or know about the Hawks now is Luke Hodge and Sam Mitchell kneeing blokes and Buddy Franklin swaggering around kicking 150 goals. And this is all we know about the Hawks. They don't care. They are unsociable. They don't apologise and they win all the time.
Yeah. But it's like, has any premiership team been sociable? You go back, Sydney, they were a joke in the 80s and 90s until they, adopted the Bloods culture, there and started being hard-nosed, bastards, to put it bluntly, on the field. North, for all their years where they were good, they hard at the ball. You had Carey there; he wasn't led from the front. It's like there hasn't been a inoffensive premiership team in the AFL in the last 20 or 30 years. It's
Ever.
not.
It doesn't happen.
No, it's not. It's not like the SNFL where you could fluke a Glenelg or a Sturt. Flashy players who aren't afraid to put someone's nose out of joint where that's possible. You just don't ever get that in the AFL, and you sort of wonder why the club thinks that could happen.
Every premiership team has swagger, it has attitude, it has a shitload of arrogance, and they are ruthless. I mean, you look at the Bombers, you look at the Brisbane three-peat team, you look at Geelong, you look at Sydney, you look at the Crows. I mean, they all had that sort of arrogance about them.
Well, you take that whole arrogance argument and you look at the case that we haven't had any suspensions this year, and you've got to think that's got to have been a directive from Ken that basically don't go out there, don't get yourself suspended. But then we've seen what's been the consequence of that. We've had the likes of Brisbane walk all over us. We had Gray sling tackled into the ground and knocked out, and then our players basically sat back and did nothing about it. It's like, yes, it can be annoying when you lose a player for a tiki touch suspension, and if we get a suspension, that happened to us. We aren't a Mitchell or someone who can knee someone repeatedly or get away with it. But then teams aren't going to come out and think they can just push us around without consequence. That if we'd been willing to cop a suspension or two along the way, I think we'd go a long way to not being so pushed around and bullied on the ball this year. And that's got to come from the coaches.
And I guess the other part that I was talking about as well is that, are we the only club in history that has purposely sought to water down our home ground advantage? Like, do you remember last year when Keith Thomas sent that email out to the members because we booed Hawthorn off after we beat them? Are we the only club in professional sport that would take a 50,000 parochial brand new spaceship of a home ground and actively say to our own paid up members, "Hey guys, come on, don't boo the opposition, don't be intimidating. We want this to be family friendly and fun, and by all means, let's get rid of the swearing, let's get rid of the racism, let's get rid of outright abuse of fellow patrons." But I don't know about you guys, but when I rock up to the football, I want us as a crowd to be intimidating towards the opposition. And for Keith Thomas to come out and tell us
the whole point of having home games.
What's the point? Let's just play to an empty house and we'll go watch them at the cinema with some fizzy pop and some popcorn. I mean,
why don't we all traipse across the footbridge to Elder Park and watch it on the big screen? Why does anyone need to be in the stadium?
I mean, since these directives have come down from Kosh and Thomas, I mean, there was a reiteration after that the Western Bulldogs supporter claimed that her son was, I think she changed her story about 6 times. But after she claimed that her son was abused, there was actually a video put up after the game. I think it was after the Geelong game by Keith Thomas and David Koch, talking about how to behave and we want everybody to be happy and have a good time. And you just think to yourself, okay, well, we want to get rid of all the, the really, unsavory stuff, and we do want it to be a safe, fun environment for fellow spectators. But what are we doing trying to water down fan culture in terms of booing the opposition, or really making Adelaide over an intimidating place to play? And I mean, have a look at our record since that period where we were undefeated. I think we've played our last 15 at Adelaide Oval with won 7 and lost 8, and we've had Geelong and West Coast and Richmond come to our oval, and Essendon leave with a famous victory, and we just tend to be happy with that. Well done, thanks for coming to our home ground. And I'm glad we could bend over, just like you said with Lobie to Jacobs, and I'm glad we could say no, put the lube away, we'll just give you the win. So I don't know, I'm just uncertain as to what the top brass of our club are trying to do in terms of shaping the direction of what we want our club to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think they fail to understand that there's nothing which makes you feel more engaged as a fan than you get 40 or 50,000 people all as a group just there cheering, shouting, getting behind the team, not oh no, I'm not sure if I should call out here because someone might be offended. It's football is a tribal event, and you don't want to be thinking, oh, should I be saying this? I mean, I want to be able to go to football and call Adam Goods a campaigner until he stops coming over for games here.
I mean, we had that yesterday with Graham Gooding's ridiculous tweet.
Yeah,
I mean, whether that minority was booing Walker, whether that minority was booing the umpires, it's our home game. We've just lost a heartbreaker to our biggest rivals. We've got a right. We've paid our money to go. We've got a right to respond, don't we?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, well, I'm not going to take anything from Adelaide fans. I mean, I still remember the very first showdown and end of the match. I was thinking, I should go over and boo their fans, and just remembering just looking over and seeing their fans leaning over the race and actually, spitting on their own players. And I thought, who are these mob? And, it's 20 odd years later and they're still, just a bunch of campaigners, their supporters, and I want to be able to shout out and not be afraid to say that.
And it's all well and good for them to come out and say, oh, how disrespectful it was to boo Walker on that particular day because of the Phil Walsh thing. We weren't booing Philip Walsh. We weren't booing anything to do with that situation. And if we want to boo, we'll boo to our heart's content, thank you very much. And I think people need to remember that this is a mob who, from the bottom dregs of their supporter base through to their administration and their CEO, wanted us out of the competition and were calling us a disgrace to the AFL, a disgrace to South Australian sport, and now they're complaining because 47 people booed while Walker accepted a trophy. Piss off.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, boys, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You would never hear something like that past David Koch or Keith Thomas's lips because we're the good guys.
Well, it would never reach the media if the situation was reversed. No one would mention it. It would just be, Travis Boker, got the trophy and, was clapped by, all that were there, and, gloss over, the minority who booed. It's, as I say, it hasn't taken long for the media to start getting back to their usual self and in a normal state of affairs returning.
That's it. Well, look, let's move on from that. This has gone way over time. This has been very cathartic, and I'm bloody fired up now. I want to watch another game of footy straight away. But just before we go, I've got to raise this question because we probably should have spoken a little bit about the Magpies because they did beat top of the table Woodville West Torrens by 41 points in a wonderful display and a great response to the loss against Norwood. But people's favourites, Kane Mitchell and Sam Gray shared, I think, 65 disposals, 18 tackles, 14 clearances, 12 inside 50s, a goal and a partridge in a pear tree on the weekend. What are the odds that we're going to see Aaron Young, Brendan Archie out, Kane Mitchell, Sam Gray in this weekend?
Yeah, well, one of them will probably come back, but it's not going to make them grow, 2 or 3 inches and put on, 5 or 10 kilos. They're still going to be undersized for AFL no matter how many times they dominate at the lower level. It's, it just doesn't change the facts.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd rather see. I mean, is it not time now to start experimenting with the list? Get Mitch Harvey in. Maybe give John Butcher one last hurrah. Let's actually make a change that is at least going to tell us something about the state of the list going forward, instead of just, as you say, doing the same old rinse repeat. Out Aaron Young, out Brendan Archie, in Kane Mitchell, in Sam Gray. Like, let's do something that'll actually tell us where we're at going into the summer.
Yeah, I mean,
This is the perfect opportunity to drop Lobie for a week and say, just have a week off, whatever. Let's put in Mitch Harvey against Sean McKernan, who's not going to do anything as a ruckman. Ryder can ruck the full game. We'll chuck Harvey in there as a chop out, see how he goes, play him out a full forward. Hopefully he kicks a couple of goals.
And then we've reached a stage of a season, like I say, we've got to give these guys a run, but it's in a finals a shot. It's now in the last 7 rounds. It's do we find a silver lining out of a season? Playing these guys, seeing where the state of a list is, or are we going to rock around again to 2016 and we're still here asking the questions? Can Butcher make it? Is Moore or Young finally going to have their breakout year? It's I don't want to be playing Groundhog Day this time next year asking all the same questions over and over again. I want some of these questions answered, and now finals are out the way. Let's get some of these ones answered. Where are we at with some of these players?
Absolutely.
That's it. Well, on that note, I think we should call it quits for the evening, and thank you very, very much, guys, for coming on.
All right. Well, I've got to admit, like I say, it's been cathartic, so at least got it off the chest.
Absolutely loved it.
That's it. Until next one, boys.
Okay.
Counter power.
Counterport.
Got to keep his feet. Corns just worried him out of it. Slips the handball to Treadray. Back turn, well done. Little give. This might be it. Corns, Treadray, Pierce.